that's really interested in what they're interested in, somebody that's a specialist in that area. We as Montessorians in the classroom are generalists, and it's required that we have a fairly high level of skill in an awful lot of different areas. But in the elementary years, it's not their job to know everything. It's their job to spark the interest of the child through materials that we're going to be showing you later, and through the technique of basically storytelling. They're good storytellers. In primary, we don't even talk while we're showing. We talk before, we talk after, but what we are is we're presenters. We're demonstrators. We show how to interact with something concrete, and then we step aside and allow the child the repetitions. These guys, they capture their imagination. They tell them something that's interesting, something fascinating, something curious, something odd, and get them involved. And then the kids do the research, because that's how they find out how to find things out. So sometimes they may be a little bit frustrated because they're going to say, well, how do you da-da-da? Or what about this? And the teacher will say, well,
that's a good question.
That's a good question.
Why did you research that?
Yeah. And at first they may be a little bit annoyed because they want to, just give it to me. But part of our jobs with this age level is to help them organize their own learning. We're there to get them started and then let them get going. Because in the beginning, when the first graders come into the classroom, they really don't know how to organize their time. I mean, in 3 to 6, as long as they were not disturbing anyone, they could choose what they wanted to do. If they weren't disturbing anyone, and if they weren't disrupting the environment or misusing a piece of apparatus, they were free to choose. And they were following an inner prompting. With the 6 to 12-year-olds, they're free to figure out how to do their work, when to do their work, but they need to work. And on Monday, or is it Monday that you guys, anyway, one day a week, they sit down with their teacher and they figure out their plan. And they're expected to follow through on their plan. And you know what? For the first couple of months, sometimes they don't follow through on their plan. But that's all part of the learning process. I mean, we could, as happens in more traditional education, stand over them and make sure that they do it. But then they're not learning intrinsically about how they learn. They're not learning intrinsically about their learning styles, and they're not being intrinsically motivated. They're being motivated by the bigger person who's saying, you do this. It takes longer to build intrinsic motivation, but once it's there, you've got a lifelong learner. And we build it by knowing, again, developmentally, these kids need these wider contexts. They need to see the whole. And then we need to move down into smaller and smaller and smaller bites. And then they can hone in on exactly that little teeny piece of whatever it is that they're really interested in. But they see it in the global context.
Universal.
Universal, exactly. Universal context. Another important thing for them is building community. Their classroom communities are very important to them. And maintaining their classroom becomes their job. The classroom teacher for the 3 to 6-year-old creates the beautiful, perfect, orderly, prepared environment. Because these kids, the 3 to 6s, are still in the sensitive period for order. And things really need to be just so. 6 to 12-year-olds, not so much. If things are stacked up like that and they want the thing at the bottom, they know exactly that it's there at the bottom, and they'll go get it, and off they go, because that's where they are now. And so the order isn't as important to them anymore. They've outgrown that. And they take on the responsibility of maintaining their environment. So they have very specific jobs that they do.
Yeah, there's a responsibility chart right up there where everything in the classroom is assigned to a child. You rotate that.
So they've grown in their area of responsibility, and they understand that they're responsible to the other members of their community. If my job is making sure that everything in the math shelf is in order, and I don't do my job, if my friend is looking for the multiplication bead board, and they can't find it, then I'm a detriment to their learning. And so that's a very concrete way of understanding responsibility. The little kids had a concrete way of understanding concepts. The older ones are getting that preparation for moving out into the larger society and for really taking responsibility for our relationship with others and our relationship to other living things. You can see there are lots of plants around the classroom. There are all kinds of different animals for them to interact with. And these are then larger responsibilities that they have. They're learning about what rules do we need to have in order to make things work, rules between each other in society, and getting work done. And so it's her job, the others in the elementary classrooms, to guide and facilitate this process so it becomes internalized.
It's important for them to set their own rules, because otherwise they won't follow them. You become a police officer, which is no fun. It's much more fun to teach. So having the kids set their own rules gives them a sense that this is their community, and therefore they're going to follow the rules that they've created for their community.
And they can also set the agenda for a classroom meeting.
Oh yeah.
If there are issues that are going on interpersonally, if there are issues that they have with the adults, those can be brought to the community and dealt with.
My class even wants to take on the board.
Ah!
Bring them on! I'll take them all on. All right.
But this is part about how do you learn to be a responsible citizen? You got to practice it when you're interested in it, when you're in the sensitive period for that. The little ones go through sensitive periods for language development, for small objects, things like that. These older ones are in the sensitive period for learning right and wrong, learning about what's the moral, upright thing to do, and for being a part of a group and a community. And so we're providing them practice time to do this as part of their learning. And it's integral in what goes on. Now, then there we were saying, so they were saying why, and they were wanting to learn. Then we go into the next tumultuous period, the third plane of development. And again, Montessori marks this one in red. And this is adolescence. And the question of the adolescent is, how do I fit in? And what they want to do is they want to do things with others, and they want to become themselves. So those are the driving forces there. And this child needs to practice what it is to be a full member of society, but in a way, in an environment that's prepared to make it safe. Because they're not ready to be an adult, but they need the chance to practice. They also are just not as interested in intellectual things. That's why Montessori really front loads so much in the 6 to 12, because these kids want to know. The adolescents are not really in that space. They are trying to figure out, how do I go from somebody who lived in a family to somebody who's going to live in the world? And so Montessori prepares an environment for these kids called the Erdkinder, or Earth Children's School. And in this environment, they have a lot of opportunity to learn how to be economically responsible,